Mara Chen knew the day would bring trouble the moment the Sun cube failed to rise on schedule. On Hephaestia, a dwarf planet deep inside the Kuiper expanse, sunrise was a mechanical illusion. An orbital mirror 6 kilometers across caught the Sol variant starlight and stitched a crude dawn across camps and refineries. It had never missed a tick in 5 standard cycles. When it faltered, only 2 explanations made sense: sabotage or a mechanical glitch big enough to bankrupt 4 mining syndicates. By the time Mara hiked from her prefab quarters to the open pit's western lip, she had the first reports. Drone cameras caught a silhouette against the stars. An approaching Helix Consortium insertion ship, bulky as a pregnant spider, surrounded by a halo of landing craft. Independent miners like Mara's crew called them the weights, because once Helix dropped on you, they never came off until they'd crushed every last gram of ore or resistance. The mirror outage, then, was no malfunction. Helix wanted the night, and they'd manufactured it. Mara tapped her headset. "Almeida, how long before they touch down?" Chief Engineer Des Almeida answered from the power station. "We're seeing retros firing now. 30 minutes, maybe less. Your orders? Lock every spool of data core proof the claim is ours. Then meet me in the fault." Des swore. "You sure you want to hold court down there?" "Not exactly tour ready yet." "Helix isn't here for a tour. They're here for the dark energy seam we found yesterday. They can't have it." Mara lingered on the pit's rim one last second. Cranes and crawler bots sat silent, frozen in the engineered dusk. 500 people had signed contracts trusting her to keep them fed, paid, and, above all, alive. 500 people now faced a war they'd never trained for. She turned, hurried past pallets of boreheads, and took the freight elevator 3 kilometers below. Down and around. The fault chamber radiated a smell Mara could never name. Cold metal laced with a sweet ozone tingle that tightened the teeth. A day earlier, Dr. Farid Ndur had called her down here to witness behavior that violates every known conservation law. She'd seen a hairline fissure 40 meters long running through the igneous mantle. On the eye it was matte black, but instruments read negative photons, negative pressure, negative everything. They were standing on a rip in space-time where dark energy bled outward like sap. Every spectrometer in the colony maxed into red the instant the fissure was uncovered. Des had slapped a radiation warning on the borehole cap anyway, because that was the protocol. When you didn't recognize something, treat it as deadly until proven otherwise. That caution had saved them more than once. When Mara entered now, Farid was hunched over a slab of handwritten notes. Paper notes. He never trusted electronic logs this close to quantum weirdness. He looked up. "They're landing? Any minute. Helix will send survey auditors first, claim our strike violates their long-range prospect. Then come the lawyers in armored skins, then the crawler tanks. Same playbook as New Eros and Xanthus." Farid made a thin smile. "If they breach that fissure with heavy drills, no lawsuit or tank will matter. The vacuum decay would swallow half the dwarf planet. That's why we stopped them before they descend this far." Mara paced to the primary drill, a 20-meter column of tungsten-laced diamond segments, still crusted in magma glass. "How fast could we rig the laser cutters for battlefield duty?" Des arrived just in time to hear. He pushed back the visor of his welding mask. "You want to weaponize our drills?" "Think broader," Mara said. "Imagine the open pit ringed by every spare beam emitter we have. A grid. Anyone drives something heavy across it, they carve themselves into scrap." Des whistled. "A planetary-scale minefield of lasers. Power drain alone." "We have power." Mara pointed at the black line. "Tap the fault." Farid dropped his stylus. "Mara, we've barely mapped its threshold. Overcouple an inductor coil, and you might speed the fissure's expansion. Then calibrate it. We have 30 minutes. 28 minutes later, the Helix insertion ship hissed onto the regolith like a collapsing lung. A 40-meter ramp unfolded and disgorged armored crawler tanks, slab-sided rectangles on segmented tracks, bristling with Gauss turrets. Their commander rode atop the lead chassis, Director Ivan Callas, A corporate officer wrapped in gold mesh armor with redundant micrometeor shielding. He carried no visible weapon. He didn't need one where he expected no resistance. Helix's first broadcast came across every public channel in a flat baritone. By authority of Vanguard Resource Protocol 87, Helix Consortium hereby assumes custodial stewardship of dwarf planet Hephaestia for the duration of immediate safety operations. All non-Helix personnel will power down equipment and await shuttle relocation. Non-compliance constitutes hostile action. Mara heard the declaration while sprinting along the trench where Dez's riggers installed fiber conduits. She keyed her throat mic. "Broadcast open?" she asked. "Open," Dez confirmed. She answered Callus in the same wideband. Her voice went planet-wide. "Hephaestia is an independent charter under Outer Belt Mutual. We assert finder's privilege and sovereign extraction rights. Any advance past Grid 17 will be met with defensive counterforce. Turn your toys around, Callus." Static crackled. Then Callus again, amusement leaking into his monotone. "Grid 17? I see no perimeter. Only tired miners and second-hand machinery. Stand down, Marachen. You barely kept your operation solvent last quarter. I'm your relief, whether you call me that or not." Mara cut the channel and muttered, "Let's show him the perimeter." Intervals of excavated bedrock now housed repurposed drill mounts. Originally, each housed thermal lasers used to liquefy ice pockets. Dez had unbolted the emitters, rotated them horizontal, and rewired their arrays to a lattice of fault-powered capacitors. Farid provided calculations he claimed would keep the exotic vacuum in stable flux, feed power out, never in, and avoid resonant harmonics exceeding 11.3 kilohertz. Dez listened, nodded, and attached a sign he scrawled, "Don't sing near the fault, seriously." They had positioned 147 lasers in a loose ring 3 kilometers across, some buried flush under dust, others disguised as scrap crates. Thin as they were, each lens could focus a beam to 5 microns wide, fine enough to slice a crawler's armor like butter if anything heavy broke the detection tripwires. Mara climbed an observation scaffold. In the distance, the helix column lumbered forward, tracks chewing orange dust. The mirror still hadn't returned. Everything lay under star-bright blackness. "Dez," she said. "Status. All emitters green. Capacitors at 97%. We're invisible on infrared. Dust layer's doing its job. Farid, I am guarding the kill switch with my life, Foreman, and practicing not singing." Mara might have laughed if her stomach weren't glacial. "First contact in 100 meters, Dez reported. The crawler line reached Grid 17. The lead tank rumbled over a narrow ridge of tailings. Nothing happened. Mara's heart lodged in her throat. Had wind buried the fiber sensors? Had the new power feeds tripped breakers they hadn't tested? Director Callus opened channel again. "Pretty line of rocks you've got. Step aside, miners." The second crawler crossed. The third. Dez spoke quietly. "Signal's not firing. Sensor bundle delta flashing red. Could be misaligned." "What's the fallback?" Mara asked. "I can manually trigger the entire network. But if something's miswired, could cross-couple, blow half the capacitors." "Do it!" Dez slammed the manual override. For half a heartbeat, all lights on Mara's HUD went black. Then the regolith itself bloomed white as a newborn star. A horizon-wide shriek cut the radio band, drowning every channel. Beams of coherent light, once used to vaporize basalt, erupted from the ground at perfect right angles. One sliced the lead crawler from prow to stern. Two halves continued forward on momentum, glowing slag weeping from engine compartments. Another beam lanced upward, clipped the trailing lander craft, and drew a smoking line through its belly. Lithium batteries went critical, turning the sky into glitter. Crawler 2 attempted to rotate turrets. A lattice of intersecting rays diced its turret ring into coins. The whole 70-ton vehicle slumped. Suddenly, 8 separate objects, each dripping molten armor glass. Crawler 3 reversed in panic, but its track cleaved off clean. It slewed sideways atop a glimmering chessboard of severed parts until a capacitor fed one last pulse and perforated the reactor housing. Plasma geysered upward. Mara's riggers burst into cheers over the comms. She silenced them with a raised fist they couldn't see, but automatically obeyed. Smoke plumes curled into the thin atmosphere, turning starlight sanguine. Between pillars of ash stood Director Callus, armor still intact, framed by ruin. His personal shield had deflected the first fringe beam. He strode forward 5 paces and stared toward Mara's scaffold, searching the dark for optics. He opened channel. Only rasping static came at first until his voice cut through, laced with disbelief. "You weaponized your excavators." "That was a warning," Mara said. She hated herself for the tremor in her voice, but kept it anyway. Fear could be mistaken for compassion, and Callus wasn't owed that. "Leave your equipment where it sits. Return to orbit." She let a beat pass. "The ground's hungry down here." Callus inhaled raggedly. "You'll never hold. Helix will send cruisers. You'll be a footnote to a footnote." "Maybe." Mara glanced at constellations flickering behind the smoke. "But your landing party's gone. The claim window will close. And if your cruisers fire from orbit, they'll crack the surface and liberate a vacuum decay event. Nobody survives that, Director, including your shareholders." She cut transmission. The victory tasted brittle. Des and Farid met Mara at the scaffold's base as medics scrambled to treat radiation burns from stray reflections. In the cavern below, the fault spat arcs of violet light. Des had tied its output to a bleed array, but the rough shudder in the ground said the seam didn't like being milked for war. "Feedback's pushing 9% above Farid's safety curve," Des said. Farid touched the rock with a sensor wand. 8.7 kilometers per second tension increase. If we hit 12, spontaneous crack propagation becomes likely. Mara processed that. "In non-doctor?" Farid removed his goggles. "We hit 12, and a dark energy bubble big as the planet's core might form. Best case, we lose the hemisphere. Worst case, the universe reminds us who is boss." A tremor rolled underfoot like distant thunder. "We can't keep the Lattice armed." Dez's voice cracked with exhaustion and awe. "But if we shut it down, Callus could rush us with infantry suits." Mara exhaled. "Then we finish this now?" Helix infantry hadn't waited. Escape pods blossomed from the ruined lander like seeds from a split husk. 40 power-armored troopers skimmed across a regolith on grav plates, leapfrogging crater edges, weapons humming. Mara's perimeter lasers simmered at standby, unable to discharge another full volley without overloading the fault. Des rerouted half to lower wattage and pulse modulation, turning beams into kilowatt whips instead of megawatt cleavers. "We paint them, not slice them," he explained. "Blind optics, fry suit circuitry, non-lethalish." "Good enough," Mara said. The first troopers breached the ash line. Des pulsed 2 emitters. Purple darts flicked across the dust, striking visor plates. The soldiers staggered, sensors burned blind. Their backup IR kicked in, but Dez's next volley overloaded that too. Troopers stumbled, colliding into each other like insects under a lamp. Others adapted, dropping visors, switching to full manual. Gauss rifles barked. Ferric slugs peppered the scaffolding, sending razor shards outward. Mara ducked, felt a hot line graze her shoulder. Blood beaded, evaporated in Hephaestia's feeble air. Riggers joined the fight with mining pistols, compressed gas nailers that drove 12-inch spikes into rock. Against armor they were laughable, yet in the chaos some spikes found joints and soft seals. A trooper toppled, pinned through ankle and dust. Another tried to retreat and found a derailment of sleepy drills where Des had sent remote commands to raise them like spikes. Mara saw Callus striding amid his troops, untouched. The gold mesh suit ran its own algorithmic path, shifting him between laser whips and stray Gauss ricochets with improbable grace. His HUD must have cracked Mara's comm encryption because his voice hailed her again, intimate on the private channel. "You're wasting good people, Foreman. And you wasted your crawler division. That seam belongs to Helix. Your laser show proves its merit. Give it up. I'll sign bonuses. Your workforce stays employed. Nobody dies of exotic annihilation today." Mara looked at the fault's latest readouts, 11%, and climbing. "Let's cut to dividends," she said. "You want the fault, you have to take it, personally." She killed comm. Then she unclipped her harness, grabbed a cutting torch, and slid off the scaffold. The battlefield between them was a junkyard of glowing crawler fragments, pitted scaffolds, and twitching troopers. Plumes of mirror dust fell like ashen snow. Mara advanced, torch sputtering blue in one hand. Callus turned, studying her as if she were a peculiar core sample. Foreman Chen herself. He opened arms theatrically. Do you intend to weld me? I intend to end this. She nodded past him, toward the fault chamber's elevator shaft. We both know that seems the prize. Let's go see it together. Suspicion rippled across his features, then calculation. You think to bargain inside the chamber, where your people control the power feeds? My people will pull back, just you and me. Decide if Helix owns the future, or none of us do. Callus loved brinkmanship. He signaled a platoon sergeant. The troopers stopped firing, dragging wounded behind slag piles. Mara tapped her headset. Des, stand down outer ring. Full attention on capacitor stability. Are you nuts? Des hissed, but he obeyed. Mara and Callus rode the freight elevator, flanked by silence, broken only by metal groans. Halfway down, tremors rattled the cage. The fault thrummed like a behemoth heart. At the bottom, they stepped onto obsidian tiles where molten rock had cooled after yesterday's drill. Farid waited alone, one palm on the master coil. He nodded once to Mara, then escorted himself topside. Steel doors clanged shut, isolating Mara and Callus with the anomaly. Up close, the fissure flickered with internal lightning. Threads of darkness curved inward, like nerves. The space around it felt colder than vacuum and hotter than plasma, a contradiction that shattered the senses. Callus's face shield polarized automatically. Beautiful, he whispered. And fragile, Mara said. Force it open, and we swallow ourselves. Or harness it and remake physics. He traced a finger in the air a centimeter from the seam, as though stroking a sleeping lion. Why mine nickel and ice when you can mine the latent pressure of the cosmos? Mara stepped beside him. My crew found it. My crew decides. You want to share? Talk to us. Respect our charter. But you sent tanks instead. Necessary show of strength. Strength? Look again. She gestured upward at the staccato rumble of collapsing tunnels. Deliberate, orchestrated by Des. On the HUD, Mara keyed private band. Now! Across the colony, Des powered down every safety curtain shielding the lasers. Their housings retracted like petals, exposing naked cores. Energy still flowed from the fault to capacitors, but now had nowhere to go. Pressure inside the bank rose, humming like a trapped swarm. Alarms lit. Callus's suit picked it up. You're letting the charge spike? Mara watched the seam dance. You wanted to harness it. Tell me how to stop it safely. He took half a breath, then realized the truth. Nobody alive knew yet. Capacitors screamed over subspace. Dez's voice tight. Foreman, we're at 11.8. We crossed 12 in 60 seconds. Mara kept her gaze on Callus. Stand down your claim. Pull your troops to orbit. Accept joint stewardship under belt law. I'll instruct Des to re-engage the lattice, bleed the energy, and we all walk away. Callus considered. The odds were simple. Obey and maybe survive, or gamble that he could think of a fix inside 1 minute. His ego warred with logic. Logic won. My authority, yes. I rescind aggressive operations. Helix will submit to arbitration. He tapped his wrist, sending recorded orders. Mara signaled Des. Stabilize. Switches toggled. The lattice primed. Energy vented upward in perfect spirals, forming auroras bright enough to paint the rock violet. The readout dipped, 11.6, 11.1. Tension eased. Callus exhaled. There, partnership. Not yet. Mara holstered the torch. You have one more task. She offered him a hardened data wafer. Full copy of our scans, engineering notes, Farid's papers. You'll submit them to the Interplanetary Cartel for open peer review. No patents, no monopolies, knowledge-free, or not at all. Callus looked ready to protest, then remembered the price of arrogance. He took the wafer and slotted it into his suit. Done. The seam pulsed gently, a cosmic cat purring. 2 standard weeks later, Hephaestia rotated under a bona fide sunrise again. The mirror satellite had been repaired by a joint Helix Minor engineering crew working side by side. Arbitration teams installed at the main mess hall, while Farid hosted scientists streaming from every corner of inhabited space. Debate raged night and day about how, or whether, to poke the fault further. Des walked the pit's edge with Mara, watching repair drones dismantle the improvised laser grid. Slagged crawler halves were already being smelted into new habitation frames. "Think they'll make a monument out of the site?" Des asked. "Only if Farid doesn't blow it up first," Mara said. Des chuckled. "Hell of a gamble you played. All that talk of turning the dwarf planet into confetti? You were bluffing on the timers, weren't you?" Mara didn't answer right away. She followed the distant shape of Director Callis supervising a crane. His gold mesh suit looked scuffed, humbler. The man had tasted mortality and future in one swallow. "Not a bluff," she said at last. "If he'd refused, I'd have cut the bleed lines. Better to end a dwarf planet than let one corporation own dark energy." Dez's eyes widened. "You scare me sometimes, boss." She stared across the dawn-bright regolith, picturing the invisible seam that pulsed beneath. Scared her too, but fear kept blades sharp. "Come on," she said, "let's build something that isn't a weapon today." They headed for the crane yard, leaving new sunlight to spill across ground that had once been a kill zone, and might yet become the birthplace of physics rewritten. Provided miners, scientists, and even conquerors remembered the lesson carved in glowing lines across the dust. Some seams run too deep to own, and trying to take them by force only cuts your ambitions into ribbons.